For over 12 long years, the world silently observed the widening rift between one of Hollywood's most iconic fathers and his only daughter. They had once been the picture of perfection, the perfect family, always in the spotlight, grinning for the cameras, creating an illusion of happiness that seemed untouchable. But as time passed, their once untouchable image started to show cracks slowly, almost imperceptibly. The world's eyes were always on them, but despite their celebrity status and the public's obsessive fascination, the distance between them grew with every passing year. The public and the media relentlessly speculated, but no one truly understood the growing emotional gulf between Tom Cruise and his daughter, Suri. That long-held silence, the quiet discomfort that had lingered for years, was finally torn apart. In one defining moment, a truth more painful than anyone had ever imagined was exposed, like a raw wound that had festered for too long. The veil of secrecy that surrounded their family was lifted, revealing the emotional turmoil and separation that had been hidden from the world. Suri Noel, once known as Suri Cruise, was no longer the child adored by the cameras and adored by her famous father. She had grown up in a world she never asked for, a world filled with fame, attention, and expectations that she had no control over. Born into the dazzling glare of the public eye, she was constantly surrounded by media frenzy and celebrity status, often feeling like an object of interest rather than a person. Every moment of her life was scrutinized by the media, making it impossible to experience the innocence of childhood. Suri was forced to navigate a life of secrecy, and in doing so, she sacrificed parts of herself, just to survive in a world that wanted to own her, shape her, and control her image. Her childhood was not her own. It was a product of the circumstances and forces around her. Forces so overwhelming and complex that no child, no matter how gifted or capable, could possibly comprehend. The weight of fame, the expectations from both her famous parents and the public, shaped her life in ways she never asked for. What should have been her time to learn, grow, and experience the world with wonder was clouded by the ever-present eyes of the world watching. Now, at the age of 19, Suri has decided to speak her truth, but not through words or interviews. She has chosen to communicate through her own decisions, her actions, and the choices she has made for herself. In a world where so many seek to speak loudly in order to be heard, Suri has quietly and powerfully chosen silence. Her actions have become her voice, and in doing so, she has sent a message so clear that it has reverberated across the globe. This quiet but forceful declaration has stunned everyone who once believed in the idea of a perfect family, who once saw Tom, Katie, and Suri as the epitome of what a Hollywood family should be. The image of them laughing together on red carpets, glowing with happiness, is no more. That illusion has been shattered, leaving everyone, fans, critics, and even the media, reeling from the truth that was hidden in plain sight. This is the untold story of a young girl who, for much of her life, could only ever glimpse her father from afar. A girl who watched her father live out his own version of the American dream, while she was left to grow up in a world of expectations she couldn't escape. And it is the story of a man who watched helplessly, feeling as though his daughter was slipping through his fingers, disappearing little by little from his life. Their bond, once unbreakable, began to weaken, as Suri's life slowly diverged from Tom's, like two parallel lines that could never meet again. Their story, filled with love, passion, secrecy, and profound pain, began like a fairy tale, almost as if it had been scripted for the big screen. When Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes first met in 2005, their connection was immediate and undeniable. It wasn't just a meeting of two people, it was the collision of two worlds. Their connection sparked public fascination even before it truly began, with the world watching eagerly to see how their relationship would unfold. Katie, 26 at the time, was a rising star, radiant from her success in Dawson's Creek, a young actress who had captured the hearts of audiences with her innocent charm. She exuded the kind of small-town warmth that was refreshing in a world filled with high-profile celebrities. To the public, she seemed like the perfect fit for Tom. Tom, at 43, was already a Hollywood legend. His name was synonymous with blockbuster hits. Top Gun, Jerry Maguire, Mission Impossible. These were films that had defined a generation. Tom had become an icon not just for his talent, but for his charisma, his ability to captivate audiences around the world. The mere mention of his name was enough to sell out theaters across the globe, and every move he made was watched by millions. Years E. Earlier, Katie had openly admitted in an interview with 17 magazine that her dream was to marry Tom Cruise. At the time, this confession seemed like the wishful thinking of a young girl still in the throes of Hollywood fantasy. It was something you might hear in the diary of a teenage fan, a dream that felt impossibly far-fetched. But little did anyone know, that dream would one day become her reality. Katie's words, innocent as they were, would become a prophetic declaration of her future. When Tom first laid eyes on Katie, it is said that he looked at her and with a sense of certainty told those around him, "I'm going to marry her." It was a bold, decisive statement, one that reflected his confidence, his drive. Within a matter of weeks, what seemed like an impossible connection began to take shape. The chemistry between them was undeniable, electric, and love blossomed quickly. The two of them were inseparable, and before long the media was flooded with photographs of them holding hands in Rome, laughing like teenagers, and embracing each other with an openness that made them seem more like a high school couple than two of the most famous people in the world. The world watched as their love story became public, and it was hard to deny the magnetic force between them. For Tom, a man once known for his controlled and composed persona, his love for Katie transformed him. The public saw him not as the calm and calculated movie star, but as someone deeply, passionately in love. But it wasn't just their public moments that captured attention. It was everything about their relationship, the way they looked at each other, the way they smiled when no one was looking. It was raw, intense, and real. The kind of love that seems too good to be true. Then came the moment that would forever define their relationship in the eyes of the public. The day Tom Cruise jumped on Oprah Winfrey's couch, his eyes wide with excitement, and shouted to the world, "I'm in love." It was an outburst that sent shockwaves through the media. Some saw it as a sweet, exuberant declaration of romance, while others saw it as a troubling sign of instability. But no one could look away. The image of Tom, usually so poised, acting like a teenager in love, became one of the most iconic moments in television history. And then on April 18, 2006, their daughter, Suri, was born. She became the living embodiment of everything that had come before, the culmination of their love story, their whirlwind romance. Tom called the day of Suri's birth the happiest day of his life. He couldn't stop talking about her, constantly referring to her as a miracle. But even this miracle was steeped in the beliefs that guided Tom's life, beliefs that would change the course of Suri's life forever. Katie, raised in a Catholic family in Toledo, found herself in a world she didn't understand. She was expected to follow rituals and practices that felt foreign to her, practices rooted in Scientology, a belief system that would come to dominate her life in ways she never anticipated. From the silent birth to Tom's personal monitoring of her pregnancy with his own ultrasound machine, nothing about this experience was normal. It was Tom's way of showing devotion, but to Katie, it was the beginning of something she couldn't yet fully grasp. And as she navigated her new life, her own sense of self began to slowly fade into the background. Their wedding, a lavish affair held in the 15th century Odescalchi castle in Italy, seemed like a fairy tale event. With a price tag of over $3 million, it was everything Hollywood dreams are made of. Katie wore a custom Giorgio Armani gown, while Tom glowed with pride. The guest list was filled with A-list celebrities, from Jennifer Lopez to Will Smith. But behind the fairy tale facade, Katie's parents, lifelong Catholics, grew increasingly uneasy. Scientology had taken over their daughter's life, and they were powerless to stop it. For Tom, this was love, pure, unfiltered, and all-consuming. For Katie, it was the beginning of isolation, a gradual disappearance from the life she had once known. And for Suri, it marked the start of a childhood that would never be normal. The family that had once been the envy of the world began to fracture, and the cracks in their perfect image became more and more visible. When Tom first saw Katie, he didn't hesitate to declare to those around him, "I'm going to marry her." The words were bold, almost impulsive, but in the end, they proved to be a commitment he would follow through on. In just a few weeks, what had seemed like an impossible romance, the kind of fairy tale that people only dream about, began to blossom. Their chemistry was undeniable, the kind of magnetic connection that radiates off them when they're in the same room. It wasn't just an attraction, it was something more profound, more consuming. It was a love that was impossible to ignore. As the world watched, they were photographed holding hands in Rome, laughing with carefree joy like teenagers, and sharing moments of unrestrained affection that made the media and the public swoon. The images were everywhere, perfect, romantic, and full of life. For Tom, a man long known for his reserved, stoic persona, this relationship was a total transformation. He was no longer the cool, composed movie star who commanded attention from afar. Instead, he became a man deeply, passionately in love, someone whose emotions were visible to the world, raw and untamed. The public, for the first time, saw a side of Tom Cruise that was both vulnerable and real. Their connection wasn't just about the moments captured in paparazzi photos or magazine spreads. It was something deeper, something almost cinematic. The love story between Tom and Katie was like something out of a Hollywood script, and it captivated millions who followed their every move. Then came the moment, the one that would be seared into the history books. On the Oprah Winfrey Show, in a moment of unrestrained emotion, Tom, swept up by his love, leaped onto the couch and shouted, "I'm in love!" The image was shocking and unforgettable, a moment that felt like a break from the usual controlled persona Tom had carefully crafted. To many, it was a grand romantic gesture, the kind of declaration people only dream about. To others, it was unsettling, maybe even awkward. But regardless of how it was perceived, no one could look away. In that one moment, Tom Cruise declared his love for Katie in a way that was both exhilarating and unconventional, a gesture that would go down in pop culture history as one of the most memorable and unorthodox public displays of affection ever seen. And then on April 18, 2006, their daughter, Suri, was born. She was the living embodiment of their whirlwind romance, the symbol of everything that had come before. Tom, overwhelmed with emotion, called the day of her birth the happiest day of his life. He couldn't stop talking about her. To him, she wasn't just a daughter, she was a miracle. But even this miracle, the most precious creation of his love for Katie, was enveloped by the practices and beliefs that had defined Tom's life for years. The Church of Scientology. Katie, a young woman raised in a traditional Catholic family in Toledo, was suddenly thrust into a world that felt foreign and strange. Everything she knew about pregnancy, childbirth, and what it meant to be a mother was turned upside down. Scientology, which governed so much of Tom's life, now dictated the terms of her pregnancy. The practices were strict, foreign, and often difficult for Katie to comprehend. The practice of silent birth, for example, which meant no one was allowed to speak during the delivery, was just the beginning. Tom, ever the hands-on father, had even purchased his own ultrasound machine so he could personally monitor the pregnancy, an act that seemed odd to outsiders, maybe even controlling. But to Tom and Katie, this was not an intrusion. It was devotion, a way of showing their commitment to each other and to the belief system that had shaped so much of their lives. To the outside world, it might have seemed extreme, even unsettling. The idea of a woman giving birth in silence, of a husband buying his own medical equipment to track the pregnancy, raised more than a few eyebrows. But to Tom and Katie, these were the rules, the practices they had chosen to follow. It was their way of bringing a child into the world, not just according to their own values, but within the context of a belief system that had, for better or for worse, become part of who they were. For Katie, this sudden immersion into a world so unfamiliar was both jarring and bewildering. But at the same time, she was swept up in the romance of the moment, in the love she shared with Tom, and the overwhelming joy of bringing their daughter into the world. In these moments, what seemed like the ideal family, Tom, Katie, and their miracle child, was already being shaped by forces that were beyond their control. While the world looked on in awe, admiring their fairy tale romance and the birth of their daughter, Katie was silently adjusting to a life that was both extraordinary and suffocating in equal measure. Her personal journey was one of profound change, and the world was about to see just how deeply those changes would affect her, her daughter, and ultimately, the world she and Tom had once imagined together. Their wedding in November of that same year was another media sensation, an event so grand and extravagant it seemed straight out of a fairy tale. Held in the stunning Odescalchi Castle in Italy, the ceremony was an affair that cost over $3 million. The castle, perched high above the serene waters of Lake Bracciano, provided the perfect backdrop for a wedding that was as beautiful as it was opulent. Katie, glowing with excitement, wore a breathtaking Giorgio Armani gown, a vision of elegance and grace. Tom, her proud groom, couldn't hide his joy, his smile beaming with the love he felt for her. Celebrities from all over the world attended the event, including Jennifer Lopez, Will Smith, and the Beckham family, making the guest list as star-studded as the wedding itself. It was a moment that seemed to encapsulate everything Hollywood had come to admire, an extravagant, perfect spectacle. Yet beneath all the glitz and glamour, things were not as flawless as they appeared. Katie's parents, lifelong Catholics with strong moral values, were deeply troubled. They couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As they watched their daughter slip further into the world of Scientology, a belief system so foreign to them, their concern for her well-being only deepened. Despite their attempts to be supportive and embrace her choices, their anxiety grew as they saw Scientology increasingly take hold of their daughter's life. Their worries were not just about the practices Katie was being drawn into, but about the loss of the woman they once knew, someone who was slowly being consumed by a belief system that didn't align with the values they had raised her with. For Tom, the life he had chosen was love, his love for Katie, his devotion to Scientology, and the family they had built. It was a life that fit perfectly into the vision he had for himself. For Katie, however, it marked the beginning of a long, slow process of isolation. Surrounded by people who were constantly watching, controlling, and advising her, Katie began to feel increasingly alone, despite being in the spotlight. For Suri, the birth of this new life meant the start of a childhood that was anything but normal. She was born into a world of expectations, a life in which privacy was a luxury, and her every move was subject to scrutiny. The family that had once been admired by millions for its glamorous, picture-perfect image began to fracture, and the cracks started to show. By 2007, Tom and Katie were still viewed as the epitome of a perfect Hollywood couple, the Golden Family. They were the dream everyone envied, living on private jets, attending red carpets, and gracing the covers of magazines. Together, they were untouchable, the shining example of Hollywood's glamorous elite. But as time passed, things started to unravel behind the glossy public image. Friends of Katie began to notice the subtle changes. She was rarely seen on her own anymore. Whenever she went out, members of Tom's inner circle, many of whom were staunch followers of Scientology, were always by her side, watching her every move. It wasn't just their physical presence that was unsettling, it was the constant, almost palpable surveillance. Katie began to feel the weight of their eyes on her at all times, and it was becoming suffocating. She wasn't just living her life. She was living a life that was being constantly observed, controlled, and dictated by others. Katie, once known for her vibrant spirit and free-spirited personality, slowly began to withdraw into herself. She became quieter, more reserved. Her once bubbling energy faded, replaced by a sense of distance that made her seem like a shadow of the woman she once was. Her friends noticed that she began repeating the same things over and over, particularly about Tom. "He's wonderful. He's amazing," she would say, almost like a mantra. It all started to feel rehearsed, as though she had been taught how to speak, how to act, and how to present herself. The joy that had once surrounded her began to fade, and slowly, Katie began to drift away from the life she had once loved. She no longer felt like the happy, glowing woman who had once captivated the world. As the years passed, Tom's two adopted children from his previous marriage to Nicole Kidman, Bella and Connor, became devout followers of Scientology, deeply embedded in the church's teachings. Tom assumed that Suri, too, would one day follow the same path. It was simply expected of her, a continuation of the life Tom had built around his faith. But Katie, despite everything, was never willing to let her daughter be consumed by an organization she didn't fully understand or believe in. Slowly, quietly, but with great determination, Katie began to make decisions for her daughter's future. She subtly distanced herself from Scientology, refusing to let it dictate the course of Suri's life. By 2010, whispers of trouble in the marriage began to spread. Katie, who had once been so open-wit, the media started to withdraw. She no longer appeared at church-related events, and her public outings with Tom grew rarer. Instead, she began reconnecting with old friends and spending more time in New York without him. Behind the scenes, Katie was planning for an escape. She knew that the life she had been living was suffocating her, and she needed to break free for herself and for her daughter. In 2012, just days before Tom's 50th birthday, Katie filed for divorce. The announcement sent shockwaves through Hollywood. No one saw it coming, not the media, not their fans, and certainly not Tom. But for Katie, it wasn't just a breakup, it was a rescue mission. She had been carefully planning every step for months, making sure she was prepared for the inevitable moment when she would break free. She changed her phone, hired a new security team, and began distancing herself from anyone she suspected might have ties to Tom or the Church of Scientology. It wasn't just about ending her marriage, it was about protecting herself and her daughter from a system that had come to control so much of their lives. The divorce was finalized just 11 days later, and in that short time, everything changed. Tom agreed to pay child support, a financial commitment that ensured Suri's well-being, but the true victory for Katie was something far more precious: her freedom. It wasn't just about leaving a marriage that had become suffocating. It was about reclaiming her autonomy, about stepping out of the shadows of a life that had been controlled by forces beyond her control. Katie and Suri left Los Angeles quietly, slipping away from the city that had been their home for so long, a city that had once promised them the world, but had ultimately confined them to a life of constant scrutiny. They left behind not just a marriage, but the whole Hollywood machine that had been an uninvited presence in their lives since the moment they arrived. They re-emerged in New York, far from the relentless paparazzi and the flashing lights of Tinseltown. It was a fresh start, one where they could breathe freely without the constant pressure to live up to the public's image of them. In New York, they were no longer just figures in the tabloids or subjects of fascination. They were simply mother and daughter navigating life in the way they always should have. In this new chapter, Katie dedicated herself to giving Suri as normal a life as possible. She enrolled her in a private school where she would be free from the circus of celebrity life. Katie made sure to shield her from the spotlight, deliberately distancing them from the media frenzy that had once consumed them both. For the first time, Suri had the chance to live as a child, without the weight of fame on her shoulders. She had the chance to grow and thrive in an environment where she could be her true self, not the product of a media spectacle. As she entered her teenage years, the transformation in Suri was remarkable. She was polite, intelligent, and compassionate, qualities that were rare in a child born into fame. Suri wasn't a princess living in a palace of public expectations. She was a grounded, thoughtful young woman, shaped by Katie's unyielding love and dedication to her well-being. As the years went by, Suri continued to evolve. She didn't just survive, she flourished. By 2021, she enrolled at LaGuardia High School of Music and Art and Performing Arts in New York, an institution known for its rigorous arts curriculum, where the likes of Jennifer Aniston and Timothée Chalamet had honed their crafts. There, Suri explored her creative potential in acting, singing, and filmmaking. But it wasn't just her creative growth that marked a turning point. It was her assertion of independence. In her senior year, Suri made a bold statement that would echo loudly in the hearts of those who had followed her journey. When it came time for her to perform in the school's musical production of The Addams Family, her name appeared in the program not as Suri Cruz, but as Suri Noel, taking on her mother's middle name. It was more than just a change of name, it was a declaration. It was a powerful act of independence, a clear signal to the world that she was stepping into her own life, untethered from the legacy her father had once tried to impose on her. Suri had chosen her own identity, a new name that symbolized her desire to walk her own path, separate from the constraints of the public figure she was born to be. By the time Suri graduated in 2024, her transformation was complete. Her name, Suri Cruz, had faded from the public eye, replaced by Suri Noel, a name that represented the young woman she had become, someone who was no longer bound by the expectations of her parents or the media. Tom was absent from her graduation, just as he had been absent from so many other milestones in her life. He hadn't been there to witness her grow into the remarkable young woman she had become. But Katie, her mother, doubled. As there standing proudly in the crowd, beaming with pride, it was a moment of triumph not just for Suri, but for Katie as well. This was the life they had always wanted, one away from the spotlight, one where they could live on their own terms without the pressure of living up to the world's expectations. Katie's pride was evident, but it wasn't just in her daughter's accomplishments. It was in the life they had built together, away from the chaos of Hollywood. They had found peace, true, hard-earned peace. They had made it through the turbulence, and now they were standing at the edge of a new beginning, both of them stronger for the journey they had shared. Katie had given Suri the freedom to become who she was always meant to be, a young woman, confident and independent, ready to take on the world. Now, at 19, Suri is a university student studying fashion and music, exploring her creativity and pursuing a future that is entirely her own. She is carving out a life for herself that is uniquely hers, one that is not defined by the past or by the fame that once enveloped her. Her relationship with her father, however, remains distant, non-existent even. Despite Tom's continued financial support, there have been no public reunions, no efforts to bridge the chasm that has grown between them. There is no indication that Tom is seeking a reconciliation, and there is no sign that Suri has any desire to welcome him back into her life. Their worlds, once intertwined, have now drifted so far apart that it seems almost impossible to imagine them ever crossing paths again. While Tom's career continues to thrive, his ambitions now reaching into the realm of space exploration, with projects in collaboration with NASA and SpaceX, the distance between him and his daughter remains as vast as ever. He is busy building a legacy that extends beyond the Earth itself, aiming for feats that no one has ever imagined. Yet despite all his professional achievements, he remains distant from the one person who once meant the most to him, his daughter. In his pursuit of new horizons, the emotional distance between him and Suri may be one that can never be bridged. Katie, on the other hand, has found peace in the life she has built with Suri. She has found joy in watching her daughter become the strong, independent young woman she is today. Katie's pride in Suri's strength and resilience is evident in every moment they share. She knows the sacrifices they both made to get to this point, and she is proud of how far they've come. Katie has also found her own sense of fulfillment, knowing that the life they have created together is one built on love, strength, and independence. As Surrey Noel continues to move forward into adulthood, the world watches from the sidelines. The question remains, will Surrey ever allow her father back into her life, or has the distance between them become too great to overcome? Will time be able to heal the wounds left by years of silence, or have the boundaries between them grown too deep to ever be crossed? Surrey has lived her life in a way that most people could only dream of, choosing her own identity, her own path, and her own future. But in doing so, she has also closed a chapter on a part of her life that is forever shaped by the choices made by the people she loved. What do you think? Can the passage of time heal the rift between father and daughter, or have the forces that kept them apart for so long cemented a permanent separation? Will the silence between them ever be broken, or will the distance between them last forever?